The first time my family called my invention useless, my mother was holding a casserole dish over the box of parts like she was deciding whether my future needed reheating or crushing. "Move your little science project, Sarah. This is hot." I was standing between the kitchen island and the garage door with a roll of paper towels under one arm, watching steam cloud the foil lid. Under that cardboard box were 12 sensor casings, 3 circuit boards I had soldered until 2 in the morning, and the only prototype that had made it through a full leak test without frying itself. "Just give me 1 second." My brother Nick leaned back in one of my dining chairs, the one with the loose screw he always promised to fix and never did. "You still doing the water coaster thing?" Brittany, his wife, laughed into her wine glass. My dad did not laugh right away. He waited until everyone looked at him, then gave the tired little chuckle he used when a bill came in higher than expected. "It is not a coaster." Mom set the casserole down anyway. Not hard enough to break anything, just hard enough to tell me the box did not matter more than her green bean casserole. The cardboard bowed. Something inside made a thin plastic crack. I felt it in my teeth. My house was 980 square feet if you counted the laundry closet, which my mother did whenever she wanted to remind me I had not bought a real home yet. The kitchen opened straight into the dining area. The garage door stuck when the weather changed. In winter, salt from my tires dried in white streaks across the concrete, and the space heater under my workbench made a steady clicking sound like it was judging me. Every Sunday, my family came over because I had the most central house. That was the reason they gave. The real reason was that I was single, 32, and still had enough guilt in me to unlock the door whenever somebody knocked. Nick brought laundry sometimes because their washer made a grinding noise. Mom stored holiday bins in my garage because her basement was damp. Dad kept a fishing cooler by my back wall because he said garages were for things people needed, not for lady gadgets. I slid the casserole dish off the box with 2 oven mitts and set it on the counter. "Careful," Brittany said, still smiling. "That invention might sue you." Nick tapped the side of the box with his knuckle. "What does it even do again? Beeps if water is wet?" My father finally took his seat at the head of my table, which nobody had assigned him. He just claimed it the first time I hosted and never gave it back. "It detects leaks before they become claims. Under sinks, behind washers, water heaters, older rentals, places people do not check until the floor is ruined. So, a smoke alarm for puddles. Kind of. See? Useless. If there is water on the floor, you see it." I wanted to tell Nick about slow supply line leaks and wall cavities and how insurance companies paid out billions in water damage every year. I wanted to explain that most disasters started as something small enough to fit under your thumb. I wanted to pull up the data on my laptop and make them see the pattern I had been seeing for 18 months. Instead, I lifted the cracked casing out of the box and turned it over in my palm. A hairline split ran across the edge. Mom glanced at it. "Can you glue it?" That was her whole apology. "Maybe." "Good. Dinner is getting cold." My family did not think of themselves as cruel. That part matters. They thought they were practical. They thought I was the one making life difficult by caring too much about a project that had wires, receipts, and no obvious paycheck. They had watched me spend evenings in the garage after my operations job, testing tiny plastic pucks under the utility sink, and decided the only reasonable explanation was avoidance. Avoiding dating. Avoiding children. Avoiding growing up. Dad scooped casserole onto his plate and nodded toward the garage. "How much have you spent on this thing?" "Not that much." "That is not a number." "A little over 9,000, over time." The table went quiet for half a second, then Nick whistled. $9,000 for basement Roombas. They do not move. Even better, stationary useless inventions. Brittany laughed again, but softer this time, the way people laugh when they know they should stop and do not want to be the first one to lose the fun. I looked down at my plate. There was a water ring on the table from Nick's beer bottle, spreading slowly into the wood because he never used coasters. I had built 12 devices that could detect a teaspoon of water in under 8 seconds, and my brother was leaving a circle on my table while calling me ridiculous. "Maybe put your money towards something real," Dad said. Certification, down payment, something with a return. This could have a return. Mom reached over and patted my wrist with 2 fingers. Honey, every hobby feels important when it is yours. I did not pull away. That was one of my bad habits, letting the smaller disrespect happen because objecting would make the room worse. I had spent years making myself easy to host, easy to borrow from, easy to interrupt. I could tell you where every serving spoon belonged, but I could not tell my own mother to stop touching my wrist like I was 12. The space heater clicked in the garage. My phone buzzed on the counter. For a second, I thought it was a work email. Then I saw the alert banner from my test app. Sensor 12 offline. The cracked one. Nick saw my face and grinned. Did the coaster call for help? I picked up the phone, then the broken casing, and walked toward the garage. Behind me, Dad called after me. Sarah, do not sulk. We are only teasing. But when I opened the garage door, the cold concrete smell came up sharp, mixed with solder and cardboard and wet winter tires. My workbench was buried under Mom's plastic Christmas wreath bin, Nick's folded beach chairs, and Dad's cooler. My prototype tray had been pushed almost to the edge to make room for things everyone else had decided could live in my space. I set the cracked sensor down under the work light. The tiny green diode blinked once, flickered, then went dark. From the kitchen, they were still laughing. I stood there with my hand on the bench and promised myself, not dramatically, not out loud, that one day they were going to understand exactly what they had laughed at. I just did not know then that the number attached to that understanding would be $250 million. The next morning, I found a green bean stuck to the corner of a circuit board. It had dried there overnight, wrinkled and pale, right beside the solder point I had been so proud of the night before. I stood in the garage in pajama pants and a fleece jacket, holding my coffee with both hands because the space heater needed 10 minutes to make the concrete bearable. My workbench was an old hollow core door balanced across 2 filing cabinets. The left side was mine. Calipers, sensor casings, a cheap soldering station, a notebook full of test times and failure notes. The right side had become everybody else's. Mom's wreath bin, Dad's cooler, Nick's beach chairs, 1 cardboard box labeled baby stuff in Brittany's neat marker script. I had not invited any of those things in. They had arrived the way my family arrived, through a side door and with a reason that sounded temporary. I picked the green bean off the board with tweezers and dropped it into the trash. Then I tested the cracked sensor again. Dead. For 10 minutes, I let myself be angry in the only way I knew how to be angry back then, which was silently and with cleaning supplies. I wiped the bench. I moved Dad's cooler 3 feet closer to the garage door. I stacked Nick's chairs upright instead of letting them sag across my floor mat. I took Mom's wreath bin off the work surface and set it on top of the cooler. It looked like a boundary if you did not know me. At 8:15, I logged into my operations job from the tiny desk in my bedroom. I worked for a medical supply company, not in a glamorous role, but I was good at it. If a shipment was delayed in Nashville, a vendor invoice was wrong in Cleveland, or a warehouse scanner started duplicating orders, I was the person who found the pattern before it became a problem with a meeting attached to it. That was how the sensor idea started, not with genius, with irritation. A year and a half earlier, the apartment above my friend Mara's had a dishwasher line leak over a long weekend. By the time anyone noticed, water had crawled down inside the wall and ruined half her kitchen ceiling. The landlord called it unfortunate. The insurance adjuster called it common. Mara called me from a motel with her cat in a carrier and asked if I could bring her work laptop because the apartment smelled like wet drywall and pennies. That smell stayed with me. So I started reading claim reports at night, then teardown forums, then sensor data sheets. Most leak detectors on the market were either cheap alarms that screamed under a sink when nobody was home, or expensive systems that required professional installation. I wanted something small, affordable, and boring enough for property managers to actually use. A puck that could sit under a washer, behind a toilet, near a water heater, and send an alert before the damage became a ceiling stain. Boring was the point. My family hated boring unless it came with a paycheck. At lunch, I drove to the hardware store and bought a replacement project box, 2 rubber gaskets, and a bag of those little felt pads people put under chair legs. The cashier, a teenager with purple nail polish, turned one casing over in her hand after I dropped it on the counter. "What are you making?" "Something that tells you your house is about to betray you." She nodded like that made perfect sense and rang up the gaskets. That night, rain came down hard enough to fill the gutters with a constant metallic rush. My house always sounded smaller in bad weather. The laundry closet hummed, the refrigerator ticked. Somewhere inside the wall, old pipes gave a soft knock whenever the dishwasher drained. I put prototype 12 aside and slid prototype 13 under the water heater pan. Then I sat cross-legged on the garage floor with my laptop and watched the dashboard. Green dot, stable signal, battery at 91%, moisture baseline normal. At 9:40, my phone buzzed. Laundry closet sensor, moisture change detected. For one stupid second, I thought the alert was a bug. I had been staring at the dashboard too long, and the app was ugly enough that sometimes I distrusted it on principle. I opened the laundry closet anyway. A dark crescent had formed under the water heater valve. Not a flood, not even a puddle, just a bead of water gathering at the fitting, swelling, dropping, and spreading into the edge of the pan. If I had waited until morning, maybe it would have dried. Maybe it would have soaked into the trim. Maybe it would have become one of those household mysteries people discover with a sock. I shut the valve, put down a towel, and crouched there listening to the rain while the alert kept pulsing on my phone. The device worked. I took a photo because evidence felt safer than joy. The next Sunday, I made the mistake of showing them. Mom was rearranging my mugs because she hated that I kept the chipped Columbus Zoo one in front. Nick had brought 2 hampers of laundry and left them beside the hallway like I ran a drop-off service. Dad was in the garage looking for his cooler before I had even taken my coat off. I held up my phone and showed the picture of the leak. "This is what I mean. It caught it before the floor got wet." Dad squinted. "Under your own water heater?" "Yes." "So you knew where to put it." "That is the use case." Nick lifted the lid on my slow cooker and made a face. "Or you got lucky because you stare at pipes for fun." Brittany, 7 months pregnant then, rubbed her lower back and glanced toward the garage. "Can we talk about the treadmill? Nick says you have room if you move that table." That table. I looked past her, through the open garage door, at my hollow core workbench with its cords and notebooks, and one small green dot glowing under the lamp. "I need the table where it is." The room shifted, not dramatically, just enough that everyone heard the inconvenience in my sentence. Mom closed the mug cabinet too firmly. "Sarah, it is a folding treadmill. They have a baby coming." "It is still my garage." Nick gave me that same grin from the night of the casserole. "For now. Wait until you have kids. Everything becomes storage." I almost said yes. The word was right there, worn smooth from use. Instead, I put my phone face down on the counter and walked to the garage. I moved Dad's cooler outside the door onto the little concrete step that led to the driveway. Nobody followed me for a few seconds. Then Dad appeared in the doorway, confused more than angry, like a chair had spoken. "What are you doing with my cooler?" "Making room for the table." Dad stared at the cooler like I had set it in traffic. "It is going to rain." "Then you should put it in your truck." I heard how sharp I sounded and hated that a cooler was what finally got my voice to work. Not the cracked casing, not the jokes. A faded blue cooler with old bait smell trapped in the lid. Behind him, Mom appeared with a dish towel over her shoulder, wearing the disappointed look she used when I forgot a cousin's birthday. Nick came up beside her with his arms crossed. "Sarah, nobody is attacking your table," Mom said. "You are asking me to move the table." "For a treadmill," Nick cut in. "Not a monster truck." "The table is where I work." Brittany leaned against the counter, one hand under her stomach. She looked tired, and that made me feel mean before she even spoke. "We just do not have space right now. The nursery is full of boxes, and the duplex garage has that leak smell from the old washer hookup. I cannot deal with one more thing in the house." I looked at her, then at the baby furniture box already taking up the back corner of my garage. My first instinct was to solve it for her. That was the trap. My brain could turn anyone's inconvenience into a logistics problem with my name on it. "I can help you move things around at your place," I offered. Nick snorted. "Or you can let us put one folded treadmill here for a couple months." A couple months in my family meant until I brought it up 3 times and became rude. I did not say that. I stepped into the garage and made a narrow path between the filing cabinet and the baby furniture. The concrete was still damp near the tires. A cardboard corner had softened where snowmelt from my car pooled every night. "At least get your boxes off the floor," I told Nick. "If water comes under the door, this stuff will wick it right up." He lifted both hands. "Listen to you. Water comes for us all." Brittany gave him a look. "Do not start." That tiny defense, barely anything, made me soften. I hated that too. 2 days later, I drove to their duplex after work with 3 plastic risers, a utility knife, and one of my older sensors in the cup holder. Nick and Brittany owned half of a brick duplex near Westerville as their big adult investment. They lived in one side and rented the other to a nursing student named Talia. The basement laundry area served both units, which meant nobody felt fully responsible for it. The floor had old paint flakes near the drain. The exposed pipes ran along the wall like someone had drawn them in a hurry. "It always smells damp down here," Brittany muttered, picking her way down the stairs behind me. "I told Nick we should call somebody." "You should. He says old houses smell like that." At the bottom step, she frowned at the sensor in my hand. "Is that one of your things?" "I can leave it near the washer hookup for a week. If it annoys you, I will take it back." She looked embarrassed, which surprised me. "I did not mean all the stuff Nick says." "You laugh sometimes." Her face changed. Not guilt exactly, more like being caught with a receipt she planned to throw away. "Your brother makes everything a joke. It is easier than arguing." That sentence should have made us allies. Instead, it made me sadder, because I knew exactly how it felt to choose easier. I set the sensor behind the washer, where the hose bent at an angle I did not like. I paired it to my test app and taped a temporary label on the wall with my number. Brittany watched from the stairs, rubbing slow circles over her belly. "If it does beep, does that mean we are about to drown?" "It means you get a chance not to." The first alert came 4 days later while I was in a vendor meeting about back-ordered exam gloves. Moisture event. Unit B laundry wall. For half a second, I just stared at the notification. My manager was talking through a spreadsheet. Someone in procurement had their microphone too close to their keyboard. The little red banner sat at the top of my screen, almost polite. Then a second alert hit. Moisture rising. I messaged Brittany. No answer. I called Nick. Straight to voicemail. I called again, already standing, already reaching for my keys. My manager paused. "Sarah? I have a property emergency. I will make up the time." I drove through sleet with one hand gripping the wheel and the other tapping Brittany's number at red lights. At the duplex, Talia's car was gone. Nick's truck was gone. A package sat on the porch getting wet at the corners. The spare key was under a fake rock because Nick believed burglars were lazy. I let myself in. The basement smelled wrong immediately. Not old damp. Fresh metallic water. A bright, cold smell. The washer hose had split near the coupling. Water sprayed in a thin fan against the wall, running down behind the machine and across the painted floor toward a stack of Talia's storage bins. The sensor sat in the path, blinking red like an angry little eye. I shut off the valve so fast my wrist barked with pain. Then I grabbed towels from the downstairs bathroom and shoved them against the spreading water. My knees were wet, my work pants soaked through. By the time Brittany called back, I was on the floor with a bath towel under the washer and my phone on speaker. "Is it bad?" "It would have been. It is contained. You need a plumber today." She was quiet long enough for me to hear her breathing. "Your thing caught it?" I looked at the red blinking sensor, half hidden behind the washer hose. "Yes." Nick arrived 20 minutes later with wet hair and irritation all over his face, the kind men wear when fear has nowhere to go. He looked at the towels, the valve, the wall, my soaked knees. For once, he did not joke. Then his eyes landed on the sensor. Huh. That was all he gave it. By evening, the plumber had replaced both hoses, Talia had moved her bins, and Brittany had hugged me in the driveway with her coat open over her stomach. You saved us a nightmare. I wanted to hold that sentence carefully. I wanted it to stay clean. Then Nick came out carrying the wet towels in a trash bag. Guess your little hobby finally did something useful. Brittany winced. I took the trash bag from him because they were my towels. On the drive home, the sensor blinked in my cup holder, still damp at the edges, and I realized the worst part was not that they thought I was wasting my time. The worst part was how quickly they could use the thing I built and still keep me small. The next morning, a number I did not recognize called during my lunch break. I almost ignored it because I was sitting in my car outside the office, eating almonds from a bag and reviewing a supplier escalation on my phone. Is this Sarah Walker? This is Daniel Reyes. I manage the East Side units for Buckeye Residential. Brittany Moore gave me your number. I sat up so fast an almond dropped between the seat and console. Daniel managed 26 older rentals around Columbus, most of them duplexes and 4-unit buildings with basements that looked exactly like Nick and Brittany's. Talia, the nursing student, had apparently told him the sensor caught the leak before her storage bins were ruined. I do not have a commercial product yet, I told him. I am not asking for polished. I am asking whether you can put a few in problem spots and tell me when something is wet before a tenant calls me from ankle-deep water. That was how I got my first pilot. Not from a pitch deck, not from a shiny startup event. From a basement with paint flakes, a split hose, and my brother reducing the save to a hobby finally doing something useful. Daniel met me the next Saturday at a 4-unit building near Worthington. He wore a canvas jacket with a tear near the cuff and carried a ring of keys heavy enough to pull his belt sideways. He asked boring, beautiful questions. Battery life, Wi-Fi range, tenant privacy, false alerts, cost per unit, what happened if the power went out, whether I could export event logs for insurance documentation. For the first time, my answers did not sound defensive. They sounded like answers. We installed 6 devices that morning, behind 2 washing machines, under 1 water heater, beneath a sink, and beside a sump pump that made a tired grinding sound. Daniel watched me label each device and enter the unit location into the dashboard. You built this yourself? Yes. Why? I almost gave him the polished answer about preventable loss and affordable monitoring. Instead, I thought of Mara in the motel with her cat carrier. Because people usually find water after it has already won. He nodded once. Send me an invoice. Pilot fee. Not free. Free things get ignored. I went home with mud on my boots and a number in my head that felt impossible. It was not life-changing money. It was less than 1 month of my mortgage. But it was the first time anyone had paid for the little plastic pucks my family used as a punchline. I printed the invoice at my bedroom desk and walked it to the garage like a certificate. Dad's cooler was back inside, not near the door where I had left it. Back under the bench, shoved against the filing cabinet so hard one drawer would not open. On top of the cooler sat Nick's folded treadmill. Folded, yes. Small, no. It leaned diagonally across the right half of the workbench, pinning my anti-static mat beneath 1 rubber foot. For a moment, I just looked at it. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Nick dropped treadmill at your place just for a little while. Do not make it a whole thing. Dinner tomorrow? Do not make it a whole thing. That sentence should be printed on our family crest. I pulled the treadmill off the bench by myself. It was heavier than it looked. 1 wheel banged my shin hard enough to make me swear into the cold garage air. I dragged it across the concrete and left it in the center of the floor, where nobody could pretend it was not in the way. Then I took photos of the bench, the cooler, the blocked drawer, and the treadmill. Not to send. Not yet. Evidence felt safer than joy, and it also felt safer than anger. At Sunday dinner, I told them I needed the garage cleared by the end of the month. Mom was putting salad into one of my bowls. Cleared of what? Anything that is not mine. The treadmill? Nick did not look up from his phone. The treadmill, the cooler, the bins, the baby furniture you are not using yet. All of it. Brittany froze with her fork halfway to her plate. Dad made that bill too high chuckle. Here we go. I kept my eyes on Nick because if I looked at Mom, I might fold. I have a paid pilot now. I need the space. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Brittany's face opened. Paid? Sarah, that's great. It came out genuine. Small, but genuine. Nick cut across it before I could breathe. Paid pilot means what? $20 and a thank you email? It means I need my garage. Mom set the salad tongs down. Nobody is saying you do not, but family helps family. We have all been patient with the mess. The mess. My labeled bins, my test logs, my soldering station. Her Christmas wreaths and Nick's treadmill were storage. My work was mess. That was the moment I almost said something ugly. I could feel it rising in my throat, hot and accurate. Instead, I stood, walked to the garage, and brought back the invoice. I set it in the middle of the table, between the salad bowl and Dad's beer. Daniel had paid by then. The invoice showed paid in block letters. Nobody reached for it. Brittany smiled carefully. Dad leaned back. Mom looked at the paper as if it might ask her for money. Nick picked it up last. Buckeye Residential, he read. What, my leak got you a customer? My leak. The sentence landed small and sharp. I did not miss it. The device got me a customer. Nick put the invoice down with one finger. Same thing. By the end of that week, Daniel's 6 devices had caught 2 more moisture events. One was a failing dishwasher seal. The other was water creeping in near a sump pump after 3 days of rain. Neither became a claim. Neither became a ceiling collapse. Neither became a tenant screaming into a phone. Daniel emailed me the event logs with a subject line that made my hands go still over the keyboard. This is bigger than I thought. I read it twice in my bedroom because the garage was too crowded to sit in. Then I walked out and looked at the treadmill standing in the middle of the concrete like a dare. I moved the treadmill myself on a Thursday night, not out of the garage. I was not brave enough yet to dump it in Nick's driveway or call him and say the word no without wrapping it in weather reports and apologies. I moved it from the center of the floor to the side wall, folded tighter, angled behind Dad's cooler and Mom's wreath bin. A fake solution. A Sarah solution. Then the freeze came. Late February in central Ohio has a way of making every house sound brittle. The temperature dropped 28 degrees in one afternoon. By 5, the sky had gone the color of dirty aluminum, and the office parking lot was a sheet of refrozen slush. My phone started chirping before I even left work. Unit C basement, temperature threshold. Worthington 4 unit, moisture baseline change. Duplex 2 laundry, temperature threshold. I sat in my car with the engine running, watching the dashboard populate with yellow warnings. Yellow meant conditions had changed enough to watch. Yellow meant the device was doing what I built it to do. Daniel called before I made it onto the road. Tell me what I'm looking at. He did not sound skeptical. He sounded busy. I opened my laptop on the passenger seat and balanced my phone between my shoulder and ear. 3 basements are dropping fast. The Worthington sump area is showing moisture change, but not a full event. Do you have anyone who can check heat tape and cabinet doors? I have myself and 1 maintenance guy with the flu. Then start with Unit C. It has the worst temperature drop. Stay by your phone. For the next 4 hours, I sat at my kitchen island in my coat. My dinner was a bowl of cereal gone soft beside the laptop. The dashboard flashed from yellow to red in one building, then back to yellow after Daniel found a cracked window letting in cold air. Another alert caught water collecting under a utility sink. At 9:13, the Worthington sump sensor went red. Moisture rising. Rapid change. I called Daniel. No answer. I called again. When he picked up, wind tore through the speaker so loudly I had to press the phone to my ear. Worthington sump is red. I am 10 minutes out. It is rising fast. How fast? I watched the graph climb. Fast enough that 10 minutes matters. There was a pause, Then a car door slammed on his end. "Text me the tenant number." I did. Then I called the tenant myself because Daniel had given me emergency contacts for the pilot. A man named Graham answered on the fourth ring, sounding annoyed until I told him water was rising near the sump pump in his basement. "It is not raining. Please go downstairs." A door opened. Footsteps. A light switch clicked. Then his voice changed. "Oh, wow. Okay, that is water." He unplugged a power strip, moved 3 boxes, and found the pump vibrating but not draining. Daniel arrived 8 minutes later and reset the float before the water reached the furnace platform. Nobody was ankle deep. Nobody lost a storage room. Nobody had to call an adjuster from a motel. At 10:30, Daniel sent me a photo of the basement floor with a push broom leaning against the wall. Under it, he wrote, "You just saved me at least 3 claims tonight." I stood in my kitchen staring at that message while my family group chat lit up about Sunday dinner. Mom, are we doing roast or pasta this week? Nick, pasta if Sarah's garage lab has not taken over the stove. Dad, do not insult the puddle satellites. Brittany, be nice. Nick, I am. They are very important puddle satellites. I looked from Daniel's message to theirs, and something in me separated cleanly, not healed, not fixed, separated. Their opinion had felt like weather for so long that I forgot weather was not law. It could ruin your day. It could not decide what you built. By noon, the broker wanted a call. By 3, a regional insurance program manager had joined the email thread and asked whether my devices could provide reliable time-stamped data across multiple properties. I read that sentence 4 times. Then I closed my bedroom door, sat on the floor beside a pile of clean laundry I had not folded, and cried in the quietest way possible because my family was downstairs. They had let themselves in. I heard Mom in the kitchen opening cabinets. Nick's voice drifted up the stairs. "Where does she keep the big pot?" The big pot was in the lower cabinet, left side, because everything in my house had a place except the people in it. I wiped my face, answered the insurance email, and came downstairs. My kitchen was full of grocery bags I had not bought. Mom was tying on one of my aprons. Brittany was sitting at the table, heavily pregnant and exhausted, peeling the label off a seltzer can. Nick had opened my pantry and was eating crackers from the box. Dad was in the garage. I could hear the filing cabinet drawer scraping, the one blocked by the cooler. "What are you all doing here?" Mom turned with a wooden spoon in her hand. "Dinner. You did not answer the chat, so we figured you were busy." "I am busy." "Exactly. So I brought food." That was the shape of her love. It arrived without asking, used your kitchen, and expected gratitude because it smelled like garlic. I walked to the garage door. Dad had my notebook in his hand, my test notebook, the one with device IDs, failure rates, battery notes, and pilot locations written in the blocky shorthand I used when tired. He looked up, casual as anything. "Trying to figure out what all these numbers mean." The room narrowed around him. "Put that down." He blinked. I was not hurting it. "Put it down." My voice came out flat enough that even Nick stopped chewing in the kitchen. Dad set the notebook on the bench with exaggerated care. "No need to get nasty." I stepped into the garage, picked up the notebook, and held it against my chest. That was the midpoint, though I did not call it that then. It was the first time I understood the danger was not only that they laughed at what I made, it was that they laughed at it until it looked valuable, and then they opened the cabinets. I canceled dinner before anyone sat down. I only told them I had too much work that night and needed the house quiet, but the way Mom looked at me, you would have thought I had locked a child outside in the snow. "We already brought everything." A pot of sauce simmered on my stove. Grocery bags sagged on my counter. Nick had crumbs on his shirt. Dad stood in the garage doorway with his hands lifted, still offended by the notebook like it had accused him of theft. "Take it with you." My own sentence scared me a little. Brittany shifted in the dining chair, one hand on the table as she pushed herself up. "Nick, let's go." Because she is being weird about a notebook? Because she told us to go. That was the second time Brittany surprised me. She did not look happy about it. She looked tired and swollen and done with standing in the middle of more family weather. But she gathered her purse and the open sleeve of crackers, and Nick followed because ignoring his pregnant wife in front of everyone would have made him look bad. Mom turned off the burner with a wounded little twist of her wrist. "You could have just told us you needed privacy." I almost laughed, because I had tried to say it in 12 softer languages for years. I had moved boxes, cleared counters, taken coats off chairs, answered texts at work, let them use the washer, the cooler space, the spare key, the big pot, the Sunday rhythm. My whole house was an apology for needing privacy, but I only held the door. After they left, the silence felt staged, like the house was waiting to see if I meant it. I poured Mom's sauce into one of my containers and put it in the fridge. Then I carried every grocery bag to the front porch. It was petty. It was also clear. At 10 that night, I changed every password connected to the pilot: dashboard, cloud storage, prototype logs, email, shared spreadsheet. I moved my test notebook into a locking file box and slid it under my bed like I was hiding jewelry. The next morning, I called a startup attorney named Priya Shah, whose number Daniel's insurance contact had sent me. Priya did not sound impressed or unimpressed. She sounded like a person who charged in 6-minute increments and had already seen 3 founders make the same avoidable mistake before lunch. "Do you have any written agreements with family members?" "No." "Did any family member contribute money, code, design, parts, customer introductions, or unpaid labor with an expectation of ownership?" I thought of Brittany's duplex, Nick's split hose, Daniel's call. My sister-in-law gave my number to a property manager after my device caught a leak at their rental. Was there any agreement attached to that introduction? No. Good. Stop discussing the company at family dinners. The company. I wrote Waterline Early Detection LLC on a legal pad and stared at it until the words stopped looking like a costume. By day, I solved supply chain problems and pretended I was not checking sensor dashboards every 8 minutes. By night, I worked with Priya on formation documents, provisional patent language, contractor agreements, and a pilot plan. The garage changed too. I bought 2 metal shelving units and assembled them badly, with one shelf upside down. I labeled bins by revision: enclosure tests, failed gaskets, battery samples, field units. I moved the treadmill closer to the garage door again. Nick moved it back. He did not ask. He came on a Wednesday while I was at work, used the garage code, and shoved it behind the filing cabinet so he could get the baby furniture out. I knew because the camera over my driveway caught his truck, and because one prototype casing had a black rubber scuff across the top. I watched the footage twice. Then I did something I should have done months earlier. I changed the dashboard permissions. Not the garage code. Not yet. That was how conflict avoidant I still was. I could lock down cloud access before I could lock out my brother. The outside world kept moving faster than my courage. Priya pushed me to document every field installation and stop using my personal phone number on labels. I ordered proper stickers and cried when the box arrived because the logo looked almost real. Then a company called Astorpoint Facilities sent a message through the website I had built from a template. "We have reviewed preliminary field results shared by a regional insurance partner and would like to discuss commercial deployment or strategic partnership." I read it in the garage, standing under the buzzing fluorescent light. A strategic partnership was a phrase people used when they did not want to say acquisition too early. On the first call, Astorpoint had 3 people in branded quarter zips and 1 silent lawyer. They wanted deployment cost, device failure rate, sensor drift, manufacturing constraints, and proof that I owned all intellectual property. Priya joined from her office and did not let me answer too fast. "Sarah is prepared to discuss results under NDA. Ownership is clean. Documentation is available in diligence." Clean ownership. I muted myself for a second and pressed my fingers to my mouth. After the call, I drove to Nick and Brittany's because Brittany had delivered their daughter, June, and Mom insisted it would be rude if I did not bring soup. I went because I wanted to see the baby. I also went because part of me still believed that if I kept showing up correctly, my family would eventually become safe to tell good news to. June slept in a bassinet beside the couch, impossibly small under a lemon print blanket. Brittany looked pale and fierce and half awake. Nick handed me the baby for 30 seconds, then took her back when she started to fuss. "So," he murmured, settling June against his shoulder, "Mom says you are being secretive with your puddle empire." I glanced at Brittany. Her eyes closed briefly, as if she wished she could disappear into the couch cushion. "I am just busy." "Busy good or busy bankrupt?" "Busy good." He grinned. "Remember us little people when Big Puddle buys you out?" The room went still inside me. It was a joke. He did not know. But for the first time, his joke was close enough to the truth that I felt the garage code burning in the back of my mind like an unlocked door. 2 weeks after the Astor Point call, I stopped sleeping like a normal person. Diligence is a clean word for a dirty process. It sounds organized until you are eating toast over your laptop at 1:15 in the morning, while a stranger in California asks for the serial number of a prototype you built before you knew how to waterproof the battery compartment. Astor Point wanted everything: field logs, component invoices, pilot agreements, sensor failure photos, emails with Daniel, notes from the freeze event, proof that no one else had a claim to the idea. They are not your friends yet. They are a company with lawyers and money. I knew that. Mostly. Still, when the Astor Point product lead, Marin, told me their commercial insurance division had been trying to solve small property water loss for 3 years, I had to grip the edge of my desk. Marin did not laugh at the pucks. She called them elegant. I wrote that word on a sticky note and put it inside my locking file box where no one in my family could smudge it with casserole steam. At home, the air changed before anybody admitted it. Mom started asking fewer jokes and more sideways questions. How many of those little things are out there now? Dad began mentioning business shows he had never watched before. Nick sent me a meme about inventors wearing hoodies and buying islands. Brittany texted once, privately, "You do not have to answer them just because they ask." Then I changed the garage code. My hands shook while I did it. The keypad was by the side door, a cheap black rectangle with rubber numbers worn smooth on the 1, 3, and 7. It took less than a minute to set the new code. The deadbolt clicked. Such a small sound for something I had avoided for years. Nick noticed first. At 11 that morning, while I was on a diligence call, my phone lit up again and again. "Nick, garage code not working." "Nick, did you change it?" "Nick, I need the stroller frame." "Nick, Sarah." "Nick, this is stupid." I kept my camera off and watched his messages stack beside Astor Point's spreadsheet request. My chest tightened. The old part of me wanted to apologize, send the code, explain that I was not trying to be dramatic. Priya was talking about IP assignment language. Marin was asking whether any field units contained third-party firmware. Serious people with serious calendars were treating my work like it deserved clean edges. My brother was standing in my driveway calling my locked door stupid. I typed back, "I will bring the stroller frame over after work." Nick responded with a thumbs-up reaction, which somehow felt more hostile than words. At 5:30, I carried the stroller frame to his porch. June was crying inside. A dog barked down the street. Brittany opened the door with spit up on one shoulder and the hollow-eyed look of a woman measuring her life in 2-hour increments. "You changed the code." "I did." She glanced behind her, then stepped onto the porch and pulled the door halfway closed. Nick is embarrassed. He should be annoyed. Embarrassed is extra. A tired smile flickered across her face and disappeared. "He thinks you do not trust him." I looked at the stroller frame between us. Black metal, one wheel still dusty from my garage. I do not trust him with my work. Brittany absorbed that without arguing. The baby cried harder inside. For what it is worth, I told him the leak sensor was yours. Not ours. Not because of our basement. Yours. That sentence loosened something in my throat. "Thank you." He did not love hearing it. I bet. She took the stroller frame from me. If something big is happening, be careful with your parents. Your mom has already started saying God rewards family. I laughed once, not because it was funny. The letter of intent arrived 3 days later. Priya repeated the warnings before she let me open it fully. Not final, non-binding in parts, subject to diligence. Terms could shift. Do not spend money in your head. Do not tell people numbers without context. But the headline number was there, $250 million. I read it at my dining table, not in the garage, not at my bedroom desk, at the table where Nick's beer had left a water ring, where Mom had patted my wrist, where Dad had suggested I put my money toward something real. The house was quiet, except for the refrigerator and the faint hum of the laptop. My coffee had gone cold beside the trackpad. I did not scream. I did not dance. I put both hands flat on the table because the room seemed to tilt. $250 million was not a prize dropped from the sky. It was a number with conditions, taxes, attorneys, escrow, employment terms, and years of work folded into it. I was still reading when the side door opened. For one frozen second, I thought the new code had failed. Then I remembered the side door had a physical spare key. Nick stepped into the kitchen holding an empty plastic storage bin. Your garage code is still broken, so I used the key. I closed the laptop too fast. His eyes dropped to the screen before it shut. He did not see everything. I know that. He saw Astor Point's logo. He saw letter of intent. He saw enough digits before the lid came down that his face changed in a way I had never seen before. Not pride, calculation. The plastic bin hung loose from his hand. "Sarah," he whispered, "what the hell is going on?" I told Nick to leave. He did not move. The storage bin rested against his thigh. He looked from my closed laptop to my face, then to the dining table, as if the number might still be floating there above the wood. Was that millions? My mouth went dry. You used the spare key after I changed the garage code. Do not do that. Do what? Make this about a key. I almost admired the speed of it. For months, he had made everything about the project too small to respect. Now that it looked large, my locked door was the petty detail. It is about a key. It is about you walking into my house after I changed access. He set the bin down. Are you selling it? I did not answer. His face flushed. Sarah, are you selling the puddle thing? The old nickname sounded different now, smaller than the silence around it. You need to go. He left, but he took the story with him. By Sunday, Mom had called 9 times. Dad had left one voicemail that began with, "We are not angry," which meant they were already building a case. Brittany sent one text, "I am sorry." He told them before I could stop him. Priya told me not to meet them alone if there was any chance they would pressure me about ownership. They are my family. That is not a legal category that protects you. I should have listened. Instead, I told myself adults handled things directly. That was not courage. That was the last piece of me hoping a clear explanation could make entitled people fair. I cleaned before they came. That was how deep the disease went. I wiped the counters, loaded the dishwasher, and moved my laptop upstairs even though they were the ones who had used a spare key. I put the Astor Point folder in the lockbox under my bed. I checked the garage door twice. Then I set the dining table for 5 out of habit. When I noticed, I stood there holding the extra fork until my hand hurt. They arrived with food I had not requested, and a folder I noticed immediately. Mom placed a lasagna on the counter, not on my boxes this time because the boxes were gone from the kitchen. Dad sat at the head of the table. Nick stood instead of sitting, bouncing June lightly against his shoulder like fatherhood made him more credible. Brittany stayed near the sink, quiet and tense, with the diaper bag strap cutting into her coat. The house felt different with the garage locked. Not safe exactly. Braced. We need to discuss protection, Mom began. Priya had warned me about that word. Nick opened the folder and slid papers across the table. This is just a basic family LLC structure. My buddy Evan drew it up. Nothing crazy. It keeps everybody from making emotional decisions. At the top of the first page, my company name had been typed wrong. Waterline early solutions. Not even close. Dad tapped the paper with the nail of his index finger. Nobody is trying to take anything, but your mother and I gave you space to do this. We tolerated the mess. Nick's rental gave you the break. Family should not get cut out when money comes. There it was. Tolerated. Not believed. Not helped. Tolerated. Brittany's eyes stayed on the floor. Mom softened her voice. Honey, money changes people. We are trying to keep you grounded. Grounded means what? She looked wounded that I would ask her to define it. It means remembering who was here before all this. I looked around my kitchen, the cabinet Mom rearranged, the chair Nick never fixed, the doorway to the garage where Dad had read my notebook. I saw my own passivity so clearly it felt like stepping on glass. Every small yes had trained them to think my space, my time, my work, and now my company were available if they sounded worried enough. Nick shifted June to his other shoulder. Nobody is saying you did not work hard, but let's not rewrite history. That leak at our duplex got you the property manager. Brittany made that connection. Mom and Dad let you use this house for all your experiments without making you feel bad about it. I almost choked on the laugh that rose in my throat. Without making me feel bad. The same room where they had called it a useless invention seemed to hold its breath. You made me feel bad about it every Sunday. Dad's face hardened. We teased you. Families tease. You put a hot casserole dish on my prototype box. Mom lifted her chin. I did not know it mattered that much. Because you did not ask. June whimpered against Nick's shoulder. Brittany stepped forward and reached for her, but Nick turned slightly away, too locked into the argument to notice how tired his wife looked. That small movement helped me more than any speech could have. It showed me the pattern from the outside. Need became a prop. Care became leverage. A baby, a lasagna, a spare key, a family LLC. Everything could be held up as proof that saying no made me selfish. I pushed the papers back with 2 fingers. No. Nick laughed once. You have not even read it. You spelled the company wrong. His jaw tightened. Dad leaned forward. Do not be smart. I am not signing anything. I am not putting the company into a family LLC. I am not giving anyone ownership because you ate pasta in my kitchen while I worked in the garage. Mom's face crumpled in a practiced, immediate way that used to undo me. This time I stood. I need the spare keys, house and garage, all of them. Nobody moved. I walked to the little ceramic bowl by the back door where keys, receipts, and loose screws always collected. My own key ring was there. So was a garage remote Dad had denied keeping after he said he lost it. I picked it up and held it out. This too. Dad would not meet my eyes. Brittany took June from Nick at last. Her hand shook as she adjusted the blanket. Nick, she murmured, give her the key. He looked at her like she had switched sides. You are serious? It is her house. The room went quiet enough that I could hear the refrigerator cycle on. Nick dug into his pocket and dropped the spare key onto the table. It hit the wood with a flat little click. Mom pulled hers from her purse slowly, wrapped in a grocery receipt. Dad set the garage remote down beside it without a word. I took the lasagna from the counter, still warm through the foil, and placed it in Mom's hands. Dinner is over. For once, nobody laughed. The fallout did not come as one explosion. It came as weather. Mom sent a text that night. I hope the money keeps you warm. Dad left a voicemail about respect and blood and how no contract could replace the people who raised me. Nick sent nothing for 2 days, then a photo of June in the stroller with the caption, "In case Aunt Sarah still remembers us." That one almost worked. I sat on the bottom step with my phone in my hand and felt the old guilt come crawling up my ribs. June had not done anything. Brittany had tried, in her tired way, to be fair. My parents were not monsters. Nick was not only his worst sentence. The problem with setting a boundary is that your brain immediately starts presenting evidence against you. Priya called the next morning and asked if I was ready to proceed with the revised acquisition documents. Yes. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone who had slept. The final terms took another month. The headline number stayed the same, but the shape underneath it became more complicated. Cash at close, restricted stock, employment conditions, retention milestones, tax planning, escrow, indemnity language that made my eyes blur. Priya brought in a tax advisor who spoke gently and terrified me anyway. Astor Point sent engineers to examine field units. Marin flew in and met me at Daniel's Worthington building, where the sump pump sensor still sat beside the wall with a new bracket and a scuffed sticker. Watching strangers take my little device seriously was stranger than being mocked. Mockery had a familiar rhythm. Seriousness required me to stand still and receive it. At the final signing, I wore a navy blouse with a coffee stain I noticed too late near the cuff. The conference room belonged to Priya's firm and had a view of a parking garage and a slice of gray Columbus sky. On the table were water bottles, folders, and a pen heavy enough to feel ceremonial. Nobody from my family was there. For a few seconds before I signed, grief moved through me so hard I had to look away from the signature line. I had imagined, stupidly, that if something truly undeniable happened, they would become the people I needed. Mom would cry in a way that had nothing to do with guilt. Dad would clap me on the shoulder and admit he had been wrong. Nick would make one joke, then hug me like the joke was over and I was his sister again. That fantasy cost me more to give up than any legal fee. Priya slid a tissue across the table without comment. I signed. Waterline early detection became part of Astor Point facilities before lunch. By 3, the wire confirmation had arrived, and my phone had more zeros on a banking screen than my nervous system could process. I did not feel rich. I felt exposed, like somebody had removed the roof from my life and told me to keep acting normal. I drove home without music. The first thing I did was not open champagne. It was not call anyone. It was not buy anything. I called a locksmith. He arrived in a white van with a dented side panel and a radio playing classic rock low through the open window. His name was Curtis. He did not know who I was or what I had signed that morning. He only knew my back door deadbolt stuck in cold weather, and the garage side door needed rekeyed. Want all locks on one key? I looked at the ceramic bowl by the back door. Mom's key, Nick's key, the garage remote, all sitting there in a sandwich bag because I had not known what else to do with them. No, separate garage key. Curtis nodded and went to work. The sound of the drill carried through the house. Metal shavings landed on the mat. The old deadbolt came out in his hand looking smaller than the fear I had built around it. While he changed the locks, I opened the garage. It still held their things. Not as much as before, but enough. Mom's wreath bin, Dad's cooler, a cracked plastic tote with Nick's college textbooks, baby furniture pieces they had never picked up, the treadmill folded against the wall like it had won some long argument by surviving. I carried everything onto the driveway. I did not throw it. I did not break it. I set each item in a straight line along the concrete: cooler, treadmill, wreath bin, textbooks, baby furniture, beach chairs. Then I took pictures and sent them in the family chat. Pick up by Saturday at noon. After that, donation or disposal. Mom responded first. So this is who you are now. I looked at the message, then at the garage. For the first time since I bought the house, I could see the back wall. The space was not impressive. Salt stains on concrete, one crooked shelf, a workbench made from an old door, a buzzing light I still needed to replace, but it was mine in a way it had not been when everyone had access to it. Nick arrived Saturday at 11:47 with Dad's truck. He loaded the treadmill without looking at me. Dad grabbed the cooler and muttered something about people forgetting where they came from. Mom did not come. Brittany stayed in the passenger seat with June, the window cracked. When Nick reached for the baby furniture, he stopped. $250 million, he said, not quite under his breath. There was no joke in it this time. I stood inside the garage, one hand on the raised door track. You called it useless. He looked at me then, and for 1 second I saw shame before anger covered it. Families say things. And people remember. Dad slammed the truck bed shut. Brittany lifted her hand from the passenger seat, small and sad. I lifted mine back. Then they drove away with the last of their things rattling behind them. The driveway looked enormous after. For a while, people assumed the money fixed the story. That was the easiest version to understand from the outside. Woman makes invention. Family laughs. Company writes enormous check. Everyone learns a lesson while she buys a better house and stops caring. I did not buy a better house. Not right away. Maybe that disappointed people, but I could not imagine handing my shaken little life to a realtor and pretending square footage was healing. I paid off the mortgage. I replaced the water heater that had started this whole thing in my own laundry closet. I hired an accountant who made me feel like I was taking a class I had accidentally enrolled in at the graduate level, and I kept the house. The first Sunday without dinner felt wrong in my body. At 4 o'clock, I looked toward the front window because that was when Mom usually pulled up with too many grocery bags. At 4:10, I checked my phone even though I had not invited anyone. At 4:30, I opened the fridge, saw the empty middle shelf where her casserole dish usually went, and cried so suddenly I almost laughed. Boundaries do not erase grief. They give grief a room where it cannot keep rearranging your furniture. Work helped because work was honest about wanting things from me. Astor Point moved fast. My little puck became a product line with engineers, manufacturing leads, compliance reviews, and packaging meetings where people debated fonts for warning labels longer than my family had ever debated whether my work mattered. Marin kept me on the deployment team because I knew the field failures by smell, sound, and the exact kind of tenant text that meant check now. The first time I walked through Astor Point's production floor and saw rows of sensors moving through assembly, I had to stop beside a stack of empty trays. They were not prettier than my prototypes. Not to me. They were cleaner, sturdier, sealed properly, made by people with gloves and torque specs. But I missed the ugly early ones a little. The cracked casings, the crooked labels, the blinking green dots under old sinks. I took one early prototype from my garage shelf and set it on the workbench at home. Not because it worked perfectly, because it had survived the casserole. Family contact became a narrow bridge. Mom texted pictures of flowers blooming in her yard, then followed them with lines like, "Hope you are enjoying your big life." Dad sent articles about startups that failed after acquisition, never with commentary, which somehow made them louder. Nick stayed cold longest. Brittany sent photos of June sometimes, usually without Nick in the frame. I answered those. One afternoon, Mom texted, "Your father saw one of your devices at a condo building. He told the manager his daughter invented it." I stared at that message in the grocery store parking lot while a cart rolled slowly into the curb 2 spaces away. For a second, I felt the old ache for a cleaner apology. Then I typed, "I hope it works well for them." That was all. Spring came in wet, the kind of Ohio spring that makes lawns shine and basements nervous. I repainted the garage wall a color called warm linen, which was just beige with confidence. I bought a real workbench, then returned it because the hollow core door on filing cabinets still felt right. Instead, I sanded the old door, sealed it, and mounted a power strip along the back edge. I put the metal shelves on the left wall and left the right wall empty for 2 full weeks just to enjoy the blankness. No cooler, no wreath bin, no treadmill, no boxes labeled as temporary lies. One Sunday morning, Brittany came by with June. She asked first. That mattered. I made coffee while June crawled across the living room rug toward a patch of sun. Brittany stood at the garage door but did not open it. "Can I see?" I opened it myself. The garage smelled like sawdust, coffee, and the faint plastic tang of old prototypes. The workbench was clear except for my laptop, a notebook, and the first sensor in its cracked casing. A small green diode blinked beside my mug. Brittany stepped inside with June on her hip. "I am sorry," she whispered. I did not ask her to make the apology bigger than she could carry. "Thank you." June reached toward the blinking light, and I moved the prototype back from the edge. "Not that one," I told her. "That one has been through enough." Brittany laughed softly, and for once the sound did not take anything from me. After they left, I locked the garage from the inside and stood there a minute longer. On the bench sat my coffee, my notebook, and the little device everyone had called useless until it became valuable enough to claim. In the kitchen drawer, inside a small white envelope, I kept the old spare garage key. I had written spare on the front before crossing it out. I did not throw it away. I did not need to. A key can only open what you let it open. The green light blinked once in the quiet garage, steady and small, and for the first time in years, nothing in that room belonged to anyone who laughed at it.